EP.12 of Streets and Scholars. I'm Alex Alonso, and I'm here with FG, and we're bringing you another banger.
Hey, no doubt.
Hey man, I was walking down the street the other day, and his brother told me his favorite podcast is Streets and Scholars. I was like, wow, that's impressive.
Ah, that's what's up.
I mean, I haven't heard that since I was doing the Gangster Chronicles, man. 2 years ago. You know, people used to say, yeah, man, that podcast is fire. But now they're telling me this one is.
Hey, that's what's up, man.
And that was the one I was doing with Lil Reggie Wright, for those who don't know, and the infamous Mob James.
No doubt.
I mean, I can't believe I sat there for a whole year with this brother.
Hey, man, but y'all had a good thing going. You know what I mean? That inspired, and hey, it was a good thing while I was going.
And I want everyone to know, man, I don't hate Mob James at all. I wish him well. He's a grandfather taking care of his grandson, but I do have some issues with decisions that he made back in 2000, 2001, 2002 when he was doing what he was doing. And there's nothing that anybody can tell me about that. I don't co-sign any of that, but I don't wish any ill will on Mob James. I don't wish anyone to do anything to him. In fact, I want him to continue doing what he was doing, but the only way he can continue doing what he was doing is just to man up and admit to what he did and then move on. That's my only thing. And I just bring that up because I got a couple messages saying that I got some animosity towards the dude, and I really don't as a person, but I do have the issues. You know, my issue is this. The FBI agent Wade Lee, he infiltrated the neighborhood. He's a black man, and I wanted to talk about policing and black cops because I was listening to your interview that you did with former mayor of Compton, Omar Bradley, and he really had some negative things to say about the Compton PD. Obviously, he was pro-sheriff. But when you look at the history of the Compton PD, it was mostly a black police force that knew Compton, that grew up in Compton, and there were very few shootings of Compton residents by those officers because they grew up with everybody over there.
True, but I'm going to have to go back and correct you on that pro-sheriff statement because I had him sit down with him before, on a personal level, and heard him say that one thing about the sheriff is they didn't know Miss Johnson on this street. They didn't know, Miss Jackson on this street. They didn't police the community with care because they didn't grow up in these neighborhoods in order to, have love for the community. So I do got to come in on that and say that I heard, him say that out his own mouth, that the sheriffs wouldn't come in and take that same approach as far as getting to know the people in the neighborhood.
Exactly.
So I do get what you're saying, though, as far as
But he ain't pro Compton PD. He got a lot of negative things to say about the Compton PD.
Well, the thing about it is, when you're a mayor, you have to you the boss of this town. You know what I mean? So you have to make decisions that benefit the town, not your personal preferences. But I'm certain that if he could have had a black police department in place doing great, he would have preferred that, believe me.
And that's one of the things that I liked about the old Compton PD is that I believe 50% of the police force was black.
Yeah, and a lot of them still lived in the neighborhoods in Compton. You know what I mean? I know a few of them that still lived in the neighborhoods. I know a few of them that you can run into at the same bar or nightclub you be at. You know what I mean? And it's not an issue. They carried themselves. Their job was separate from their personal interactions with you, but at the same time, like you say, with the murder rate like it was, some decisions did have to be made,
Yeah, I mean, that's a whole complex situation that he was the mayor and he made some decisions. But it brings me to a thing I was thinking about is how do we look at black cops in the community? Because a lot of us grow up not liking the cops because of experiences that we have as teenagers, and how they're always jacking us up and hemming us up. We're mostly dealing with a majority white police force, no matter where you're at. In LA, Compton, Linwood, it's majority white folks that's hemming you up. But at the same time, if black people are being the police officers and the deputies, a lot of us say they're sellouts, you know, so we can't have it both ways. We're sick and tired of seeing the majority white cops policing our communities. But when we do see brothers in these positions, when we do see black cops, um, we call them names, right?
Well, I mean, it all depends on how you look at it. You know, maybe when you look at it as a youngster, you know, you look at it as a kid, man, this black cop always harassing me, or this black cop always taking me to jail, you know, because I have been arrested by the LAPD, I have been arrested by the Linwood Sheriffs, and I have been arrested by the Compton PD. And I had a different interaction with all three of them. But at the end of the day, what you have to realize is I was committing crimes every single time I went to jail. I've never been to jail maybe once for nothing. You know what I mean? So you can look at it like, man, with the police, black or they white, it don't matter what race they are. I committed a crime. They took my ass to jail. You know, now my experience were all different for each one, but we can't put that jacket on a black man that's trying to feed his family the way he know how or the way he chose to. You know, I don't call them sellouts. I just say that's what job they chose. And at one point, we were just on opposite sides of the fence. You know.
Well, I think a lot of young guys who want to become cops, they think that they can change the world. Like I've heard people say, "Yeah, I grew up wanting to be a cop because I wanted to make my community great." But when they get into that job, they realize that ain't never gonna happen. One cop really is not gonna have an impact. But it brings me back to the Mob James situation, because what I blame the most is the FBI infiltrating our communities and using black agents. And when I looked at the whole case, I noticed that Wade Lee, the black FBI agent, that was his handler. And the FBI they hire black people so that they can infiltrate black communities.
No doubt.
Because let me ask you this. If Mob James came walking in that house on Pine Street with a white dude and said, "Hey, this is my boy from Vegas," would that even have flied?
Everybody in that house would have said, "Man, you got to get him the fuck up out of here." You know what I mean? You know, no doubt.
And that's the reason why, in some instances, there are black agents, because this guy could mesh into the community.
They can get themselves into a nightclub and, you know, unsuspected. I mean, you know, you're right, you know. And it's definitely a shame. But at the end of the day, these men do sign up. I'm not mad at the agents themselves. You know what I mean? They chose that job. They chose that career. You know what I mean? But on the flip side, would have let them give him a white handler? You know, when you look at it in that aspect, he might even not have went for that himself. You know what I mean? So, you know, don't. My whole thing is, just because dude a brother, don't let him talk you into doing something, man. You've been a gangster your whole life. You know what I mean? You know, so, but this is what's going on. They're using our own to infiltrate, you know, our communities.
Yeah, I'm more critical. I mean, I'm sure you can be critical of a guy like Mob James or whoever decides to become an informant, but it takes government infiltration in the first place in order to flip these dudes. So I'm also critical of the government infiltration, and that's using guys like Wade Phillips, who's a brother that can come in Compton and hang out, and everybody's like, "Oh, okay, cool. You need some dope? Okay, no problem." Because at the end of the day, what he's doing is dividing the neighborhood. He's dividing the community. The feds are ultimately dividing hoods and creating hate against them. You know,
well, that's what they sent in to do. You know what I mean? But my problem with it is what they're doing is, you know, especially with that crack law. That crack law was so brutal because all it took was a small amount to get you so much time, and it wasn't like that in the white communities. You know what I mean? So therefore, you know, what I was pissed off at was you guys were targeting, you know, specific amounts and specific way it was cooked up in order to get a certain amount of time. If you would have just came to the hood, bought some drugs from me, you would have got some powder. You know, you specifically knew what it took to get me 10 years, and you aided and abetted in getting that done, and that's where I got the problem at.
Yeah, I could understand all of that. But I like to look at the whole system, though, as a whole, because it ain't stopped. It's still going on. There's another young FG out there getting charged through the same tactics and methods.
Right, but you got to realize this, though. That is a system that does that. The system allowed these guys to get away with putting certain drugs. You go to the white neighborhoods and they crack them dudes with drugs. They not trying to ramp their charges up. They taking them to jail on whatever they go, have. You know what I mean? I specifically still think that the FBI, along with other agencies, target the minority, target black people.
I think when it comes to that crack cocaine, especially the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s, you're right. But yo, they coming down on anybody who's slanging drugs that are laced with fentanyl.
That fentanyl is really killing people.
White boys are getting stretched out. The dude who sold the drugs to the rapper Mac Miller, he just got like 30 years.
Okay, well, listen to this, though.
White dude.
I got you. Crack wasn't killing people like that. Crack was harming people. Some people did die.
Yeah.
Right? At that time, the Congress said that this is out of hand. We're going to make it so strict that if you get caught with this small amount, we're going to give you 10 years. You notice that they haven't done that with fentanyl, and this drug is laying people out daily, right? Notice they haven't did it with that because this is not a black drug. If fentanyl was only, and this is only my opinion, if fentanyl was only in the black communities, they would have said you get caught with an ounce of fentanyl, we're going to give you 100 years.
Yeah.
But since it's not, since this is widespread, white, Asians, Latinos, this drug laying down everybody, now it's not a you're not going, you get what I'm saying?
Yeah. I think that they are talking about this in government about creating some laws against fentanyl distribution, but I don't think anything has been finalized yet. But what would be an ideal way to treat the fentanyl distributors that doesn't look, that's fair against for all groups?
Well, this is what I'm going to say, Alex. I'm going to say this. If you're going to make some kind of mandatory minimum for fentanyl, or you're going to make some kind of certain laws for fentanyl, all I'm saying is keep it across the board. Don't make it where, okay, if you tie fentanyl up in a balloon, we're going to give you an extra 5 years for that because the people in the ghettos tied up in a balloon. That's all I'm saying. If you saying we're going to give you 100 years for an ounce of fentanyl, just make sure everybody get that 100 years for that ounce of fentanyl. That's how I stand on it.
Yeah, they're definitely going to be cracking down with some new laws pertaining to fentanyl, but we are seeing white boys catching some long sentences for distributing drugs that are laced with fentanyl. But I wanted to come back to your Omar Bradley interview because I actually thought that was a fascinating, interview, an opportunity to talk to the former mayor. And I was actually surprised at how long you guys know each other. I know you mentioned he was your coach
right
in our first interview, but I didn't realize how far back y'all go.
Yeah, we went back real far. You know what I mean? His nephew is my godson. I have him tatted on my arm, rest in peace. And I was his brother Wayne. I was a pallbearer at his funeral. I know the Bradleys real good, and they always treated me Omar always treated me really like a son. He was a mentor to me coming up. I learned a lot from him, and I appreciated him having him around. As I got older and started to bang and do certain things, he became mayor. We were always tight, but at the same time, I'm out in the street selling drugs. He the mayor. You know what I mean? So, I didn't.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it was crazy. You know what I mean? And,
like you could actually tell the police, I know the mayor.
Yeah, you know what I mean? And could pull up at his house, And the cold part about it is anytime he would see me or I go to a family function, he would drop them jewels. Like, I know exactly what you're doing. Get your shit together. But at the same time, I was in them streets, and he was, a politician,
I think his relationship with people like you and I mean, basically it's his own family might have caught the eye of prosecutors and the feds. Like, who's this dude Omar Bradley? How he's so connected to the streets? Because I don't think they appreciate a politician that is so tied into the streets. And ultimately, I think, that's my opinion is I think that's the reason why they was prosecuting him in the first place.
Well, you know what it was, but I felt they believed he was too tied in. You know what I mean? I think in every neighborhood he was just as connected as the biggest drug dealer, as the biggest gang member. You know what I mean? He had pull in every neighborhood. You know what I mean? And I believe that when you take a black man, especially of his stature, you know what I mean? He was a big sized dude, muscles, intimidating, to some, and wasn't afraid to speak his mind. You know, you're only going to let that kind of gentleman go so far before you feel he may get too big. Let's shut this down. So that's a possibility, though.
And it's not like he was even doing crimes. You know, it wasn't like he's doing things that deserve being prosecuted. I just feel like whoever the powers that be, they just didn't like his get down.
Well, yeah, exactly. No doubt, no doubt, no doubt. But if you seen us get down, sometimes you could see why. You know what I mean? Because when he had an issue in the neighborhood, he didn't have no problem pulling up in that hood, jumping out, hollering at the G homies about it, you know, because he was going to try to. I mean, I had never seen a mayor like this, you know, really a politician, you know what I mean, that was really hands-on to say, listen, man, I'm hearing in my office what's going on over here. Almost basically like, man, I'm going to give y'all the opportunity to shut this down because the sheriff is going to do what they're going to do. You know what I mean? And sometimes when you just know that somebody else know what you're doing, sometimes that could be enough for you to change directions. Sometimes for some people it's not, you know, but he definitely was, like you say, pulling up in Lincoln Town cars, jumping out with trench coats on and hollering at, you know, who he need to holler at. You know, he didn't just send the police over to your neighborhood, you know, and I respected that about him.
I'm still a bit confused on the whole issue with the Compton PD and I guess associating them as being corrupt, because I think on multiple times he has put that label on the police department. But I've always heard good things about the Compton PD. I've always heard that they had a low kill rate. I always heard that they gave dudes passes. I mean, they might catch you with a little sack in your front pocket because they know you, they know your mother. They'll be like, hey, don't let me catch you again. You ain't getting none of that with the sheriffs.
Well, no doubt. And like you say, I have been arrested in Compton. You know what I mean? You know, and some people will call what they do corrupt. I call certain shit they did love. You know what I mean? Because you know what basically he said, you know, by the time you get to court, half of your dope not gonna be. That's cool with me. You know what I mean? I mean, you know, I'm cool with that. Or you pull me over and I got a bird in the trunk and you say, man, you wanna, hey, I'm gonna hold on to this, or you roll, you cool with that? Hell yeah, I'm cool with that. I take that on the chin all day long. Not saying that that's what they did. I'm just giving an example of if something like that was to happen, shit for the streets is what it is, you know. So at the end of the day, I believe whatever political response he had to make to whether it was the murders, whether it was whatever internal something that I don't know about that's above my head that was going on in the evidence room, if things were coming up missing, really, I don't know all these details. I'm just saying, you know, he made a decision to do what he felt he needed to do. But from a street perspective, I wasn't happy when the sheriffs came in, believe that.
Yeah. So you've already uploaded 2 parts to the Omar Bradley?
I have 2 parts more to upload, yeah.
Okay. And how many? Oh, so it's a 4-part.
4-part series, yeah.
Were you able to get into the issue with the new mayor that came in, Asia Brown, who was real young when she got elected? I think she was 31 when she became mayor. Because I knew that there was a lot of tension between Omar and this new girl that got elected. And I was wondering if you got into any of that with him.
I didn't get into a detention with him and is it Aja, I believe?
Asia Brown.
Asia Brown. You know, I know a lot of her supporters, personal friends of mine, that's a lot of her supporters.
He did not like her.
He didn't like her, but she wasn't first. Don't forget, Eric Perriton became a mayor after him. You know, Eric Perriton, I ain't scared to say it, out of Nutty Block over there. You know, I had run-ins with him when he was a sergeant in the police department. You know what I mean? So he came next. You know, and I know it was always tension, but in these political races, it's always going to be some tension. You got to look at it from maybe Omar's perspective as far as him being a mayor, older at the time, and then the young girl come in and get the seat, you know, which he almost won back in 2017. I don't think he only lost by 300 votes or something. They had a runoff, and he may saw one perspective way to run the city, and she saw another. You know, I look at it as politics, but I don't know the personal relationship on what, you know, the problem was with him.
Now, you mentioned Eric Perriton. I think he's an interesting person because not only was he a cop with the Compton PD, he became a prosecutor, and he was the mayor for a short time. So this guy has, you know, had an interesting career. Did you ever get to know him as close as you know Omar Bradley?
No doubt. He was like, to be honest with him, he was a Crip. You know what I mean? In my eyes, he was a Crip, and that's how I looked at him. You know what I mean? And I'm not trying to tear him down because he made his peace. You know what I mean? When he came, I had a run in with him as, like I said, when he was a sergeant. You know, and he cussed me one time. You know what I mean? You know,
that right?
Yeah, he cussed me, man. You know what I mean? So I didn't respect him, you know, just based on, you know, he was hitting me with my own medicine, you know what I mean? Some gangster shit pretty much, you know what I mean? Personal level, I didn't know him to hate him, but, you know, I'm like, okay, he a Crip. So when he became mayor, though, he came up to Ludus Park and he bought a couple fifths of Hennessy for the homies and say, listen, man, I'm the mayor now. I know all the shit that we ran into, because I know Heron them used to really have interactions with them. You know what I mean? I think one of the homies got down with him when he was a regular police, you know. And he came up to Ludus Park. What he did was he didn't buy the Hennessy. I mean, he didn't bring the Hennessy. He left the money on the table and say, man, listen, get y'all something to drink. I'm the mayor now. Listen, if you got a problem, come holler at me. All the old shit is old shit. That's when I started respecting him as far as, okay, you know what I mean? At least he did try to come make some kind of amends, you know, and that's what a mayor should do. But I still, you know me, I still wasn't no fan, you know.
Well, I remember when Omar Bradley and Perrodin, they were both running for mayor at the same time, and I don't remember exactly, but I think Perrodin had won, but then they overturned it, and then Omar Bradley became the mayor. It was like some weird stuff going on back in the day.
Well, I know at one point they were all running, and Omar beat him out. Well, no, that was when Asia was running.
Oh, this is before Asia Brown.
Yeah. That's the one I'm thinking of. So the one you're talking about, I can't picture it right now, but I know they was going back and forth. You know what I mean?
So yeah, that's a real interesting interview, man, and that's like for a guy that's just barely got into this space, man. You making some hell of a strides.
No, I appreciate it, but I got to, you know, thanks Alex Alonso on Street TV and everything you've done for me, the knowledge that you've given me. You know, I still got a long way to go. You know what I mean? But I'm definitely going to try to use what I see and learn and try to, you know, put in perspective on my own. You know, so like I said, I always appreciate what you do for me, Alex, and I appreciate you. You know, us doing this podcast together, and you know, us trying to get this going and. Hey man, you know,
Definitely, man. And someone like Omar Bradley, that would be someone that if I had the connection to him as you do, I'd interview him regularly, like once every 6 months. Or
Right.
know?
Right. Well, I know just before we get off that, by the time we finish up, you know, he's going to say some interesting things that I know people are going to say, hold on, you're going to have to go back and, you know, get some more from him, you know, so, you know, we're going to see how it go.
Yeah, for sure. Hey, your girl Jada Pinkett finally made a comment regarding the smack.
Did she?
Yeah, she said this, man. This is her quote. It's so vague and mysterious. Considering all that has happened in the last few weeks, the Smith family has been focused on deep healing. That's all she said.
You know, I mean, I don't know how to react to that. You know, I don't believe nothing she says anymore, you know, unfortunately, you know. At one point, you know, I kind of thought I knew her, you know what I mean? I've been watching her since she was a kid, you know what I mean? I was one, you know, and it's like I just don't have no trust and faith or nothing in her anymore. Just, you know, I just don't, you know?
Well, I think that she's setting up one of the most watched Red Table Talk shows in their history, because when they decide to address what happened at the Oscars, that's gonna go viral.
Yeah, but you know, this the thing about viral to me, Alex. You know, and I don't do things for the numbers. You know, I haven't gotten into that part of my life. If I ever do, I don't want to, you know, use every situation and every topic just to get some views. You know what I mean? I don't want to do that. Now, if I had $100 million, I definitely wouldn't have to be worried about going viral. You know what I mean? I'd be viral. I'd go buy a new Porsche if I wanted to go viral. But I wouldn't be sitting here, you know, and it seems like it's the attention that she may be thriving, because it's not the money. You know what I mean? It seems like it's actually the attention for her to bring it to the red table, to get the spotlight on her, for her to be in the media and name. You know what I mean? I don't know if she felt she got overshadowed by Will, or I don't know, but but it will go viral if she did do it.
Well, I think
they did do it.
Well, ultimately, she wants her show to be successful. She doesn't want people to talk about nobody watches the red table. She wants those numbers to be up there. It ain't about the money. It's about the success of her show, and for her to say, "Yeah, I have a show that people watch." And just like we do, we want people to listen. What good is it if we have a show where we do it every week for an hour and we only got 5 listeners?
No, I get you on that aspect. But at the same time, we're not sitting up creating situations and controversies to bring to our show. We're going to speak on the controversies and situations that happen. Now, say if you get into it with a beef somebody, hey, we gonna go at them. You know what I mean? And but at my point is, not to mention, I don't know. Maybe I just don't care for it no more.
Hey, I can't believe there's a lot of people out there that still think the whole thing was fake.
Yeah, I can't believe that either, man. That definitely wasn't scripted, man. By far, who's going to benefit?
Yeah,
you know what I mean. Definitely not Will, definitely not Chris. Definitely not Jada. But it has happened. At the end of the day, I do believe Chris Rock and Jada will benefit from it.
Yeah, no doubt. So I wanted to talk to you about this guy on YouTube that is going viral. Mm-hmm. This guy shoots a lot of hood videos. He does a lot of street stuff, but he ain't from the streets at all, period. But there's this YouTuber named Miko Worldwide. And this guy is known for doing a lot of videos in the Dominican Republic, for showing you the hoods. He goes to the grimiest parts. But this guy actually was charged with sexual assault and forced sodomy in 2018 in Georgia. Mm-hmm. They weren't able to arrest him, but he got charged. And somehow he knew the arrest was coming, so he fled Georgia, went to the Dominican Republic, and became a YouTuber. And he started doing all these YouTube videos, and his videos started to go viral. Mm-hmm. I mean, he's getting 50,000, 100,000, 200,000 views on a video while he's a fugitive of the state of Georgia. He's doing YouTube videos. Right. So right there is kind of crazy off the bat. But what's really crazy is the charges that that I guess they hit him with. They hit him with forced sodomy and sexual assault. And the victim in that case was either 16 or 17 years old. And at the time of this case in 2018, Miko Worldwide was 27 years old. Mm-hmm. So eventually he gets arrested in Colombia. They extradite him back to Georgia. He sits in jail, and he gets arrested in 2020. He sits in there for a little over a year, about 13, 14 months. And at that time, he decides to sign an Alfred plea, which is basically saying you're guilty. Mm-hmm. But in the Alfred plea, they dropped they took the forced sodomy out of it, but it's still that sexual assault. So he pled to that in the Alfred plea just so he can get out. And he got out, and then he started his YouTube channel again, and all his videos been going crazy. But what really got me is that he decided to come visit LA. Mm-hmm. He did a video in the 60s, and he also went to Compton. He did a video in Gonzales Park and interviewed the homies from Fruitown, Peru. So my question about this guy is that, and there's a lot of rumors on the internet that this guy's a pedophile. And I guess that's just that's open to debate. That's open to interpretation.
Right, because of the statutes of where he was.
He was in Georgia, and you could have consensual sex at the age of 16. So you have to be under 16 for it to be considered a minor. So in the court documents, he definitely had sex with this person, but he was 16 or 17 years old.
How old was he at the time?
27.
Okay.
So 10-year difference, maybe 11 years, depending. I'm not sure the month that the victim was born.
Right. 10, 11 year.
But he was either 16 years old or 17 years old when he had sex with this dude. There's no doubt he had sex with the guy. He admitted it in some court documents. So my thing is, when do you believe someone when they're trying to say they didn't do something or they're innocent? Like if this guy Miko was on a prison yard and he said, yeah, I pled guilty, but I didn't plead guilty to the forced sodomy with the 16-year-old, but I did plead guilty to the sexual assault. Does that change the way he's looked at when it comes to the prison politics?
Well, let's change the way he looked at. I'm gonna go per individual, and I'm gonna take me as one individual. So I'm gonna look at him as sexual assault. That's gonna make my ears go up immediately. I mean, you know, you either took something or you ruffle somebody's feathers to get it. You know what I mean? You know, it's assault that comes along with that sexual favor that you got. You know what I mean? And that's never a good look ever. You know what I mean? So I'm going to dive into some of the circumstances. You know, if I can get the paperwork to show the circumstances that you had sex with a 16-year-old and you're 27, you know, to me, you're a piece of shit. You know what I mean? That's just my personal feeling. But I really believe it's a whole bunch of other people that'll say the same thing.
Regardless of the law in Georgia.
Regardless of the law in Georgia. You know what I mean? Now, what you did was, yeah, you beat it wasn't a crime. You know, but morally, dude, morally, you was wrong as hell. You know what I mean? So, sexual assault, period, though, is going to warrant people to be on your helmet. You know what I mean? You can't be out there, you know, sexually assaulting people and then come to the yard and, you know, and talk about you a gangster or this or that, you know, and that's just really how it is. Sexual assault gonna carry, you know, the jacket that you're a pedophile, just period.
Even though in the state of Georgia, sexual consent is at 16, if a guy that's 27 years old has sex with a 16-year-old and he hits the prison yard, how would you look at that, and how would people that think like you look at that?
Well, we would look at it as he filed. You know, first off, he filed. Legally, he was within consent, you know. But you still sexually assaulted somebody. You still, damn near, you're a rapist. That's the term that's going to be used. That's just what it is.
Even though he wasn't charged, he didn't plead guilty to rape.
You in here for something. You did something. You wasn't innocent because you wouldn't be here. So listen, you know, and then this how we'll come in. Hold on, dog. Listen. What's the charge on your case? Sexual assault. Okay, you're a rapist. Okay, how much time did you get for? You know what I mean? I'm not going to even give you the opportunity to tell me about your auntie, cousin, brother, sister. You know what I mean? Your charge is sexual assault, and you're in prison. I don't care about what you pleaded, no contest, the Alfred law, none of that. You're a rapist, bro. Go over there with the rapist, you know what I mean, and go, you know what I mean, mind you. Hold on. Was it a minor? Now, this is where he could beat me at. Was it a minor? No, it wasn't a minor. Because in the state of Georgia, for him, it's not a minor. If I was to find out she was he was a 16-year-old, you know, it was a minor to me. But unfortunately, once he said it was a he, not a she, then that changed the dynamics to me to just put you in the, you know, pretty much the gay rapist category, and I wouldn't even, you know, I would have to turn that over to somebody, you know, for that kind of situation, you know.
Well, let me explain what an Alfred plea is to all of those that are listening, because Miko Worldwide, and his real name is Wolfgang Nichol, Michael Wolfgang Nichol, Miko Worldwide. He signed an Alfred plea, and this is what an Alfred plea is. An Alfred plea in the United States is a guilty plea in criminal court where a defendant in a criminal case does not admit to the criminal act and asserts his innocence. In entering an Alfred plea, the defendant admits that the evidence presented by the prosecution would likely persuade a judge or jury to find him guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. Alfred pleas are legally permissible in nearly all U.S. federal and state courts, but are not allowed in the state courts of Indiana, Michigan, and New Jersey, or in the courts of the U.S. Armed Forces. Okay, so did that kind of make it's a little confusing, right?
No, it's almost like a no contest, but it's a little different. You know, a no contest, you're just not pleading guilty. Alfred plea, as you just explained, is saying that you're not.
But you're assert. It says here you can assert your innocence,
Right, you can assert your innocence.
even though the prosecution probably has enough evidence to find you guilty.
Nah, I just wonder where they worded that one from and how did they come up with that one. But if your ass is in jail for it, you know what I mean? Somebody between you and that court felt, you know, you was guilty enough to be in prison.
Well, I wonder why the prosecutor. This happened in Gwinnett County. For those that are interested in Georgia, if you feel that this guy is guilty, then why not just fully prosecute him? What is the purpose of having an Alfred plea where someone that might be a sexual offender, might be a pedophile, gets to get out of jail? It's like a get out of jail free card.
No, you're absolutely right. You know, that's why I say the wording of that and the structure of that. I don't know what the purpose is, you know, but because it was clearly, you know. Now, did he do any time?
Well, he sat in there fighting it for about 1 year and 2 months.
And he probably got time served or something.
Yeah, he did. He got time served for the lesser of the charges that he was facing. So the forced sodomy was off the table,
Right.
for the Alfred plea. So basically, this guy can go online as he does, and he says, "No, I'm innocent. I didn't do any of that stuff. I'm completely innocent." And to a certain degree, the Alfred plea allows you to talk that talk.
Yeah, but the Alfred plea don't allow you to walk that walk. Because I'm going to say, dude, it says sexual assault here. You know what I mean? You sexually assaulted a man. You know what I mean? And I'm going to just be honest with you. We're going to call you a gay rapist. You know what I mean? Not that we have anything about, we're just going to call it what it is. You're gay. You pretty much raped the guy, assault. You know, that's what we going to call a sexual assault or rape. And technically, that's not the exact same thing maybe, but to us it is. You know what I mean? Just to be honest with you, we're not gonna give you all those gray areas. We gonna give you a title, and that's what you're gonna be.
Now, I understand that you look at his paperwork; it says what it says, but it kind of it makes me think about the next thing I want to talk to you about, and we're gonna come back to Miko Worldwide. But Joyce Watkins, this woman was convicted of killing a 4-year-old grandniece in her family named Brandy that had vaginal injuries, that had head injuries, and eventually died from those injuries at the age of 4. And if you looked at Joyce Watkins' paperwork, you'd probably give her the worst.
Yeah, you want her head on the stick.
Yeah, and
it, paperwork. Yeah.
It was Joyce Watkins and her boyfriend at the time, Charlie Dunn, who ended up dying in prison in 2015. So if you were to look at Charlie Dunn's paperwork, you ain't gonna let him talk himself out of that one.
Man, the sad part about it is we might beat Charlie ass, and the cold part about it is he was innocent.
But yeah, both of these people were innocent. Joyce Watkins and Charlie Dunn were pronounced innocent by the state of Tennessee. Their convictions were vacated, but they had to live with this for 30 years.
And you know how hard that probably was?
Yeah.
Especially for him.
Yeah, because it might be different when women go to prison, right?
Yeah, you still have, you still have some women in there beating women ass, but they may not stand on certain politics as much, you know, but I mean, I'm assuming they still can, though, because just think of somebody in prison for shooting somebody who sexually assaulted their kid. So when she comes through with a murder, a sexual assault, you know, but I think for me, man, I think that would be the hardest walk to walk. I mean, 'cause just say it could happen to anybody. That situation Charlie was in could happen to any of us, and I find myself on the yard with a murder circumstances, say 4-year-old. Vaginal injuries and other injuries. Man, dude's going, you know how hard of a walk that's going to be?
Okay, let's say Charlie Dunn ends up at your federal facility where you're doing time at F, and he says, look, and you guys ask him for this paperwork. And he says, look, here's my paperwork, but let me explain something to you. I had nothing to do with this girl. I had nothing to do with the injuries that this girl had. I had nothing to do with this girl's death. I got railroaded in this case. I completely got railroaded. So, I'm coming at you man to man.
Mm-hmm.
I would take an ass whooping if I did this, but I did not do this, and I got railroaded by this court.
Right.
Would you give him a pass?
No, absolutely not.
Damn.
But this what I would tell him. I'm gonna say, Charlie Dunn, check this out, bro. You might be innocent. You know what I mean? We know that. I know a lot of homies that have been convicted of crimes that they didn't do. But you can't live here, bro. Go back up there, tell them lieutenants to get you off this yard immediately. You know, that's the pass you gonna get at that moment. You know, and that's just the sad part of the life. You know, sad part of, you know, that's the reality of it. You know what I mean? That, you know, in certain yard, you can't live here with those allegations. Man, you better be hope you know. Now, somebody might come to the side though, even after he go to they get him off the yard. Somebody gonna come back and say, you know what? Hey, homie, dude probably really innocent, homie. You know what I mean? But hey, we gonna let everybody come up in here and say they innocent. You know what I mean? So that's the structure of some of these yards. But hey, man, that's a sad situation because I can only see the reason I could say that we can all be in that situation, man, is because the dude is innocent. So, man, I just couldn't imagine finding myself on a yard with those circumstances, you know, even trying to explain that I'm not in, you know, that I'm innocent. You know what I mean?
Is there a way that, I mean, you've seen so many people talk on a prison and try to explain things and you know, sometimes people have their poker face. Is there a way where you could look at somebody and you can just tell you full of shit, or say, you know what, I think this guy's telling the truth? Like, I would assume that being in prison for all those years, you can pretty much read people.
Nah, man, you can't. You know what I mean? And some people you can. Some people's story is so inconsistent, and you look at your homie like, can you believe he even saying this shit even coming out his mouth?
Yeah.
But you got some dudes, Alex, that lie to the T, and they story is like almost bulletproof. You know what I mean? And they stand on it, homie. I ain't going nowhere, homie. Like you said, I'd take my ass whooping if that was a situation. You know, y'all find any paperwork on me to say other. I mean, and really go hard. You know what I mean? Until that paperwork finally, it might say the certain paperwork may take 6 months to come.
And then you find out.
Then you find out, man, and you kind of heartbroke. You know what I mean? A little bit, because sometimes, you know, everybody paperwork, especially in today's time, don't get there like it used to. So you done befriended this dude. You done, you know, ate with this dude. You done, shit, maybe ran some fades against some other motherfuckers with this dude. You know, come to find out he a rat, man. You know, you know, it'll be heartbreaking for some people, but yeah,
that's crazy. But yeah, Joyce Watkins and Charlie Dunn were convicted of killing Joyce's niece Brandy, who she just picked her up from a family house, and was taking her back to her house. And in the process of doing that, she realized there was something wrong with Brandy. So she called up the mom and said, "Hey, she's not feeling well." And then the mom said, I'm on my way there, but they live in two different states, two bordering states,
right.
Kentucky and Tennessee. So when the mom didn't show up, she just said, I'm taking her to the hospital.
Right.
I'm taking her to the emergency. And once she went to the hospital, she died a little shortly thereafter, and then they charged her because the doctor who testified in that case tried to time the injuries. Were the injuries from the day before, or were the injuries more fresh?
Right.
They determined that they were fresh. So since they determined they were fresh, that means Joyce Watkins and Charlie Dunn had to have been the ones that did it.
Right.
But years later, they found out all her science was wrong. Everything she testified about was inaccurate, and they did determine those injuries were old injuries, meaning that were like a day or two before.
Right.
So that's how Joyce Watkins ended up in prison, and she sat there for about 30 plus years. And as of now, she don't have no money.
Right. Well, they need to give her some, man. You know, and they need to give her a lot of it because, you know what I mean, that was foul play, man. But don't get me wrong. You down in Tennessee, you down in Kentucky, you down in some of these states, man, and some of these courthouses, some of these counties that you don't have the resources to even, you know, you don't even have the lawyers with the ability to even, you know, fight these cases appropriately. You know what I mean? She wasn't a criminal. She didn't probably have no, you know, matter of fact, I don't even think they had an attorney because felt she was innocent and they was going to find out the truth. So she was telling them anything they wanted to know. Come get any evidence you want from the house, and kind of didn't take her case maybe as serious as she should have because she knew that she would have been found not guilty based because she didn't do it. You know what I mean? So.
And she's 74 years old right now.
Hey man, they done took 30-something years from that woman's life, man. They shouldn't take no 2 more years to get her paid. Not saying that money is the end all be all, but at least compensate this money for her to live out the rest of her life very well.
Well, she's gonna need a pardon from the governor, and the governor has the discretion to issue it. There's nothing that's forcing the governor to even pardon her. She's already free. Her conviction has been overturned, but she needs the governor to pardon her in order for her to get some money.
I don't get that part.
I don't either, man, but that's Tennessee. And if the governor feels like, hey, we can't afford the whatever it would be for 30 years. You figure $1 million for every 5 years. And if she did 30, you figure like $5-6 million. If they say, hey, we ain't got $6 million to give away, that governor might not pardon her, man.
No doubt, but that's some chicken shit, man.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And this is the part I'm talking about, being politicians opposed to real human beings out here, man. And there's no way that this woman shouldn't be compensated and taken care of for the rest of her life, shit, if you ain't got the 30, give her 5 now and say you gonna, hustle something up later, but that'll be foul. I don't have him doing it down there in Tennessee, but I really hope he get the understanding, man, that this woman should be taken care of for the rest of her life.
Well, one good thing about this case and Joyce Watkins and Charlie Dunn getting their convictions overturned was that the DA, the prosecutors, actually helped in letting the truth get out there. Because most of the time, the DAs and prosecutors, once their conviction is in there, they don't want to even touch it anymore, even if they know that conviction might be a bad conviction. But in this situation, the DAs in that county actually worked with the defense attorneys to bring the proper verdict for Joyce Watkins and Charlie Dunn. And you rarely see DAs wanting to do that.
No doubt, and they do sometimes, but they knew they got overwhelming evidence, man, that this lady just sitting up in here and rotting away at the expense of, being innocent.
Now, there was a case here in L.A., Geronimo Pratt, who got sent to prison in the 70s. He did 27 years, and in 97, they released him. Mm-hmm. And the district attorney here in L.A. at the time was Ira Reiner, L.A. County. And Ira Reiner did a press conference saying that he might seek to re-prosecute Geronimo Pratt after they just released him. So what they ended up, the way Geronimo got out was they didn't overturn his conviction. They just let him post bail after 27 years. And Ira Reiner said that I think I might prosecute. They did not want to admit that they did any wrongdoing in the prosecution of Geronimo Pratt. And that's why to see the DAs in this situation with Joyce Watkins and Charlie Dunn work together with the defense attorneys, that's kind of refreshing, because I never see DAs wanting to help, because you're basically admitting we messed up. And once you admit we messed up, now you're liable to pay out some money.
Right.
So it's crazy, man. We got a bunch of cases here in LA, but oftentimes the LA District Attorney's Office does not want to help. I worked on 3 post-conviction cases where we got all the guys out, but we had to fight. We had to fight against
no doubt.
the office.
Hell yeah, you're going to fight against them. They don't want to overturn no convictions, And that's the sad part. You know what I mean? They don't want to overturn no convictions. They would rather give you a lesser sentence and let you out with that conviction in place before they want to overturn your conviction. But it's just sometimes you have to.
Well, how do you feel that it took them 30 years to even, and the lady been saying, Joyce Watkins been saying I'm innocent and been having people work on this case, but it took 30 years. I mean, that's crazy. Why so long?
Well, once that examiner said, or that doctor said, that they believe these wounds were fresh, I believe at that point some people believe that, what that examiner said was law. And I think that's what's made the case stick for so long. You know, you have an expert witness per se come in, you know, and you didn't give an expert testimony. You know, your testimony or your beliefs at that time or your training at that time wasn't up to par in order to give this woman a fair trial.
Well, I'm glad she's out, 74 years old, and I hope she gets to enjoy the rest of her life with some of this money that the state of Tennessee should give her.
No doubt.
But back to this Miko Worldwide dude.
Yeah, let's get back to that.
What really got me on this is that, you know, I watch all the hood videos on YouTube when I get a chance. When he got out of jail, he came to LA and he was in Gonzales Park doing a video with the homies from Fruittown Pyru. And that's what made me say, wait up. This is too close to home for me.
Right.
You know, I knew his story. I knew about the allegations, but now you in my area now.
How long ago was this, TD? He was out on the West Coast.
2022.
Okay, now let me tell you what the problem is. The problem is this. The problem is people see celebrities and dudes who trending on YouTube of 500,000-600,000, 1 million views, you know, and they got a buzz. So when they see these dudes, you know, the first thing they do is they don't even check their history. They don't even see where they came from. They don't even check their background. You don't know if they're a rat, if they're a pedophile. You don't know nothing about them. All you know is you see them on YouTube doing big numbers. And this is the problem with the starstruck community, you know, and I can't even call them kids. This grown-ass men that's starstruck when they see certain people. There's no way this dude should have been allowed in Gonzales Park with somebody doing a thorough background check on him. That park is a legendary park, you know, represented by the Compton Pyrus. And, you know, I don't know if that's who you say he was there visiting us in Fruittown. They should just did more due diligence, man, on this cat before they just let him in like that.
And it doesn't take a lot of work. All it takes is you could do this on your phone. If the guy says, hey, I want to come interview y'all. Okay, what's your name? I'm Miko Worldwide. Okay, let me check you out first.
No doubt.
Let me look you up. And if you look the brother up, this is what you would have found. You would have found mugshots all over the internet with this dude facing sexual assault, forced sodomy charges, not just one, but multiple mugshots.
Right.
You know, and then you could have been like, okay, what's this dude charged with? Because I already told one of the homies from Fruittown about him after the fact. And he said if he would have known, I would have never even, he said, I'm not even going to watch this dude anymore.
Well, that's the thing about it. And what people do is they don't go check the Carfax. They go check the YouTube facts. They want to go look at the views, how many views the dude got, instead of, you know, pulling his rap sheet and seeing what he actually about, you know. And that's the thing about, you know, a dude like me. When I done been in a lot of situations where I ran into a lot of celebrities and I might shy off to the side. You know what I mean? While the homie, yeah, this the homie such, I might slide off to the side. You know, I don't know you. I don't know the whole situation with you, so I'm not finna be in the picture with you. You know what I mean? Not saying there's something wrong with you. I'm just protecting, you know, being me and doing what I do. I'm not just hopping in a picture because this dude got a name or I seen him on Instagram or YouTube or even in a movie. You know what I mean? So, you know, they got to stop, not just, you know, homies, people, period. Stop letting these being starstruck by these dudes. Do your homework, man, because when you're on a picture with a rapist, you know, a picture with a rat, now you talking about you didn't know. Yeah, that's because you didn't care to check.
Yeah, and it's not difficult to check at all. I mean, you could do this check in 1 minute. But yeah, I feel you on that. There's a lot of platforms that I would never collaborate with. There's a lot of other content creators that I would stay away from. There's dudes that want to interview me right now, and I don't want to go on there. People tell me, hey, why don't you go on there, man? That dude got a huge platform. No, I'm good. I don't want to go on certain people's platform because I don't believe in the way they deliver their content.
Well, let me ask you this real fast. I understand exactly what you're saying. I feel that. Nobody's pressing Miko Worldwide in no kind of way about his conviction.
There's about three or four guys on YouTube.
Nobody on his helmet,
but I mean, not physically.
Right.
There's people that are creating videos saying, "Hey, I'm gonna warn y'all about this dude."
Yeah.
But he has a way of just going to his channel and he does a video. Basically, he's saying he's innocent.
Right.
And he's able to do that because of the Alford plea. The Alford plea has that little clause in there that even though it says the prosecution has enough evidence to get a guilty verdict, we're gonna allow you to get out of jail free. And you can claim your innocence even though you're guilty, kind of. I mean, it just doesn't even it just doesn't even make sense because what I read earlier, it seems like there's a contradiction in it a little bit. You know, you can assert your innocence, but we have enough evidence to persuade a judge or jury to find you guilty. So then why not prosecute him?
Right.
Why are you letting him go home? Because he signed a paper. And now he signed a paper that allows him to say, look, I'm innocent of all of these charges. I just wanted to get out of jail, so I signed the Alford plea. So they were railroading me. I mean, he could actually come at you like that and say, I was getting railroaded. I ain't never raped no dude. I didn't even, well, he can't say he didn't have sex with him because I think he admitted it in
That part,
in the paperwork. Yeah. So he's definitely gay. There's no doubt about that.
No doubt about it, but I believe the allegations against him, man. You know, like you said, to me, you wouldn't even have an Alford law. You wouldn't have a law that 90% of my homies ain't never even heard of. You know, the reason you got out of jail. You know, nobody else knew about this Alford law. Nobody else done got out on it, you know. Now, on the back end, you know, I'm always suspect for guys like that. You know what I mean? Just based on, homie, how did you get this deal? How did you get them to agree to an Alford law? You know what I mean? You know, did you tell them something? You know, I'm always going to go that route, but at the same time, you know, people got to just be mindful of who all these, you know, celebrities and people with big names, and do your homework, man.
Well, I'm going to also say this. I talked to a friend of mine that lives in the Dominican Republic, and I just, we were on the phone, and I said, hey, have you ever heard of this dude, Miko Worldwide? He was like, have I?
Yeah. He
said, everybody down there is talking about him.
Yeah.
Because they said there's some rumors that he's done some foul things down there, allegedly. You know, the Dominican police haven't arrested him or charged him with anything, but I'm getting information from people who live down there in the DR that this guy has been, I guess, people are warning everybody about this guy.
Yeah.
You know, be careful about this guy, Miko Worldwide, or his name, Michael Wolfgang Nichol. And, you know, I just wanted to put that out there. You know, if you guys are in LA and you from a hood and this guy hits you up, hey, I guess it's up to y'all if you want to be on this dude's platform. But, hey, do your research. Look him up. Michael Wolfgang Nichol, Nichol. And what if one of the homies from Cross Atlantic said, hey, this dude Miko hit me up. He want to come to the hood and do an interview. What would you say to him?
I'm going to tell him, man, protect them cakes, homie, because he might try to knock you out, you know what I mean, and run up in you. But, you know, I'm going to hit him with that. That's going to make him be like, huh? Be like, you don't know the guy too well then, huh? You know what I mean? And, you know, let him know. This is what the charges is. This is what the allegations was. He was arrested for this. Now you take it from there. And if you go do an interview with him, then hey, man, I may look at you a little different, you know. But you know, you're a grown man. You can do what you want to do. But just certain shit, I don't condone. Sexual assault, it still has to be in that file of his arrest. You know, still has to be in there. You know.
Well, a lot of people told me that, hey, if this guy is what the Georgia says he is, he's going to strike again somewhere, somehow.
Right.
But it could be, this is why he goes to places like the Dominican Republic and Colombia, because you can kind of get away with stuff like that.
Right. You can go in there, slide in, slide out, slide somebody a few dollars, you know. But like you say, eventually, you know, somebody's going to, you know, so it's going to come up again, or, you know, if that's what you're doing, you know.
My boy in the Dominican Republic said that Miko Worldwide hangs out in this area where there's known prostitution, male prostitution, female prostitution, one of the grimiest areas of the Dominican Republic. And, you know, just letting people know this is where he hangs out at. This is where he stays when he comes to the Dominican Republic.
Well, the thing about it, man, you don't forget we in L.A. So, you know, you may have some people that welcome him here, you know what I mean, for the things that he do in that nature, you know. So I'm not knocking him if he just, you know, if he's gay. I'm not knocking him because of that. I'm knocking him, you know, for me, is because it was legal in Georgia, it's not legal in my mind. Don't forget the guy he had sexually assaulted was 16 years old. You know what I mean? And I think a lot of people, you know, not taking that part into consideration, or we not mentioning it enough that that's the reason I'm on this helmet, because I'm taking that 16 part into consideration. You know what I mean? And I'm going to label him a gay rapist.
Well, it's a possibility that the victim in this case was 17 because of not knowing the exact month that the guy was born in. But here's a question. Can a 24-year-old date a 16-year-old in Georgia? And it says here, the dating laws in Georgia, consensual dating between adults and minors is not a valid defense for statutory rape in Georgia. Regardless of consensual relationship, sexual intercourse with a person under the age of 16 in Georgia is statutory rape. So I guess they're saying 16-year-olds.
Yeah, you won't even have a statutory rape on your record.
Nah.
Right.
So, but you still look at a man that's 27 having sex with a boy that's 16, very suspect, even though Georgia condones it.
No doubt, but that's just my morals.
Yeah.
You know, that's my morality. That's my, how I think on the inside. Me personally, I don't date young women or never have. If I wasn't married right now, I'm 49, Alex. I'm 40 may be the lowest. You know what I mean? That's my personal preference. Hugh Hefner, went all the way down to 18 and nobody looked at him no other kind of way, but that's not my thing.
No, I think it's extremely unethical. I think you got to have some serious issues if Miko Worldwide likes to mess with 16 or 17-year-olds. That's a serious issue. He's now 31 years old. But the last thing I'll say on this is there's a question here for Georgia. Is it legal for a 16-year-old to date an 18-year-old in Georgia? It says here, it's an uncomfortable question for parents. In Georgia, a 16-year-old can have sex with an 18-year-old, a 25-year-old, or even a 50-year-old, as long as the adult isn't a teacher, coach, or in a position of official power. Then it's not a crime. Dang. So they have that little caveat in there.
Yeah, that's crazy, man.
So a teacher can't have sex with a 16-year-old,
right?
But if you're not, but those are the exceptions: teachers, coaches, and people of official power. So, man, I hope everyone goes do their research on Mr. Miko Worldwide. I would say, dude, stay out of L.A., man. Stay out of Compton. Stay out of Watts, Long Beach, because some of the homies might let you come in the hood, but most of the ones that I've talked to, they don't want you to come. They don't want you to come visit, but at your own risk, right?
No doubt. Shit.
All right, man. Where can people find you and get some of these beautiful shirts that you just got made?
You can find me at FG Unleashed on YouTube. You can also find me at FGeneral1 on Instagram. You can DM me on Instagram, and we can set something up with either Zelle or Cash App. Cash App is FG Thornton, and I'll have them out to you in a day or two. Tap into my FG Unleashed. Check out my videos, subscribe, hit the like button. I really appreciate it.
And everyone can go check out your Omar Bradley interview.
Oh, no doubt. Hey, check out the Omar Valley interview. It's a really good interview.
Yeah, go check out the Omar Bradley interview. I consider him an icon of Southern California, former mayor of Compton. Go tap in and check that interview out. And hit me up at Alex Alonso 101 Street TV on YouTube. And tap into all the podcast platforms and check out Streets and Scholars. Leave us a comment, leave us a review. Follow us on Spotify, Google, Apple, and we're out.